I serve as the company's mascot, and in a bid to retain my presence, my boss created a leisurely position just for me. The new supervisor, a staunch materialist, could not tolerate my easygoing role and coveted my position. Seizing the opportunity while the boss retreated to the mountains for a digital detox, he devised various schemes to oust me, aiming to make way for his paramour to assume my role. Within the company, my once flexible schedule transformed into a grueling routine of 9 to 10 hours daily, making my existence quite unbearable that I had originally intended to endure until the boss returned to address the situation. However, on the eve of the boss' return, he reported my alleged prolonged restroom visits exceeding 5 minutes on the company intranet, vehemently chastising me for my supposed negligence and dereliction of duty, subjecting me to a barrage of scathing criticism. This was utterly intolerable. Enraged, I resigned on the spot and smoothly transitioned to the rival company across the street, which was on the brink of bankruptcy and was about to be acquired by my former boss. When my mother was pregnant with me, my uncle, who was well-versed in astrology, calculated her due date and determined a specific day that would supposedly bring prosperity and fortune to my parents if I were born then. Yet, to my parents' dismay, I proved to be quite the disappointment. Just 2 days before that auspicious date, I initiated my arrival. Despite my mother's desperate attempts to delay my birth, even refusing to go to the hospital to ensure my auspiciousness, I emerged effortlessly into the world, thereby missing the golden opportunity to be born into privilege. Upon calculating my birth chart, my uncle offered consolation to my exceedingly disappointed parents, proclaiming that I was destined to lead a life of self-sufficiency and prosperity, alleviating any apprehension regarding my reliance on them. In response, my parents were often consumed by worry, their gazes towards me filled with an overwhelming sense of pity. Ironically, though they themselves were burdened with similar struggles, they began to mourn for my future as a potential beast of burden. Little did they anticipate that this so-called destiny would confine me to the role of a corporate mascot. As fate would have it, during my initial interview with this company, the owner, grappling with poor business performance, sought the counsel of a master to assess the feng shui of the premises. After surveying the establishment, the master requested to review the personnel records. Upon completion, he informed the owner that the feng shui was not the issue, rather, it was the people involved. The owner was taken aback, initially suspecting the presence of corporate espionage. However, the master continued, revealing that certain employees' zodiac signs clashed with the owners and their birth charts were fundamentally incompatible. As the master nonchalantly pointed out several individuals, the owner nearly succumbed to despair, for those identified were none other than the company's upper management and stakeholders. Had these been mere junior staff, their dismissal would have posed no significant challenge. However, removing several high-ranking officials would be tantamount to heralding the company's demise. Just as the owner was engulfed in hopelessness, I arrived for my interview. As I was escorted past the master, he gestured towards me, assuring the already despondent owner that my visage bore the promise of prosperity. After the master examined my fortune, he excitedly pounded his thigh, proclaiming that I not only possessed the ability to attract wealth, but could also help the boss mitigate the conflicts with troublesome employees. He urged the boss that to resurrect the company, it was imperative to retain my services. At that moment, I was present and could only conclude that I had encountered a fraudulent enterprise. This had to be a novel scam, prompting me to prepare to leave in haste. The boss, however, harbored a sense of skepticism regarding the master's assertions. The master, anxious for the boss, implored me to stay, while my conviction that this was indeed a deceitful scheme only solidified. I took out my phone, ready to report the situation to the authorities. Just then, at this critical juncture, a long-imperiled major client arrived for a visit. The client mentioned that while conducting business nearby, he suddenly remembered the boss company was in the vicinity and decided to pay a visit. The master insisted that the boss invite me to accompany the client, and under the condition that I would be compensated at a rate of 1,000 per hour before commencing work. I, a recent graduate entering the workforce, found myself utterly unable to resist such temptation. That day, the client promptly signed a significant order with the boss, rescuing the company from the brink of collapse and turning it into a profitable venture. The boss thus witnessed my wealth-attracting prowess. However, I remained resolute in my decision not to stay. My intention was to interview for a position in the research and development department, yet the master insisted that I belonged in the sales department. Moreover, I was told that I was the key to securing difficult clients during contract negotiations, a notion I found utterly implausible and fundamentally unconvincing that I am inclined to believe that the major client's prompt willingness to sign was a testament to the groundwork laid by my boss' previous efforts. Yet, astonishingly, my boss was indeed convinced. In a bid to retain my services, he presented me with terms that were simply irresistible. He specifically created a new position, sales department contract clerk, with a monthly salary of $20,000 plus commission, comprehensive insurance, no clocking in, and flexible working hours. My responsibilities entailed merely being present when clients visited the company to discuss business or finalize contracts. Thus, I remained with the company for a remarkable 6 years. Throughout this time, as my boss expanded the company's reach, my salary continued to rise, and my reputation as the company's mascot grew increasingly prominent. I had believed I would spend my entire life at the company. However, everything changed a mere fortnight ago. My boss planned to once again broaden the company's operations, promoting the former sales director to a branch office as CEO and hiring an individual from abroad with a lucrative salary to replace him at headquarters on the first day of the new sales director, Zhao Wen's tenure. My boss summoned me before him, explicitly requesting that they become acquainted. He instructed Zhao Wen not to task me with any duties aside from attending to clients and signing contracts. I was free to do as I pleased within the company. Before my boss, Zhao Wen readily acquiesced. With a sense of assurance, my boss ventured into the deep mountains to embark on a 2-week fasting retreat, seeking longevity and the enjoyment of a prosperous life. Little did he foresee that the moment he departed, Zhao Wen would swiftly turn against him. He summoned all the colleagues from the sales department for a grand meeting. In the conference room, he indirectly accused me of being a shameless fraud, capitalizing on the boss' superstitions to craft a persona of wealth and prosperity, all while indulging in the company's resources without contributing. This infuriated me to the point where I almost confronted him right there in the meeting. A few colleagues from the sales department, with whom I shared a cordial relationship, desperately tugged at my sleeve beneath the table. In hushed tones, they urged me to remain calm, explaining that he was merely employing tactics to force my departure. This way, should the boss return, he would have grounds to claim that it was my own decision to leave, absolving himself of any responsibility. I simply could not acquiesce to such a notion. My colleagues suggested that I endure the situation for the time being and report the matter to the boss upon his return. Very well, I shall endure. Yet, this forbearance only reinforced his conviction that I was a fraud. The following day, when I arrived at the office at my leisure, he had the HR department inform me that I was 3 hours late, resulting in a deduction of my wages for that day as well as my full attendance bonus for the month. This was a direct assault on my finances. The HR representative quickly reassured me, advising me not to act impulsively against the new sales director, as once the boss returned, these deductions would be reversed. Though her words were comforting, I still felt a profound sense of injustice. Seeing my disheartened demeanor, my colleagues from the sales department showered me with snacks every few minutes. Before long, my workspace was overflowing with bubble tea, cakes, cookies, potato chips, spicy strips, fried chicken, French fries, and hamburgers. The team leader of the sales department, Lin Shi, whispered in my ear, "Lele, you must hold on. When the boss returns, let him apologize to you." Sipping the milk tea that my colleague had offered me, I felt a bit better. On the second day without the boss, I find myself missing him. Lin Shi couldn't help but chuckle, and then skillfully pulled out her phone, presenting it to me with a plea. "Forget about the boss for now. Please help me make a call. I must secure this client." We were having a great conversation, but yesterday I spent the whole day trying to reach them without success. "There must be a competitor trying to poach my client, so you need to." Under Lin's eyes' watchful gaze, I took the phone and pressed the call button. "Hello, Lin." As soon as the call connected, the other party answered instantly. Lin Shi snatched the phone back, giving me a thumbs up while warmly greeting the person on the other end, President Wang. Watching Lin Shi leave with satisfaction, I glanced at the work schedule and noted that there were no client appointments for the day. This meant that I could arrange my time freely for the remainder of the day. However, to prepare for unexpected situations, such as a client suddenly becoming available and wanting to reschedule, I typically stayed in the office until the end of the workday. Unlike my colleagues, who pretended to be busy even when they had free time, I could indulge in leisure activities such as watching dramas or reading novels without pretense when there was no work to be done. The colleagues in the sales department, who I had worked alongside for 6 years, had no objections to this and often recommended captivating novels and television series to me. Did I am apprehensive that, during my tenure at the company, I may find myself engulfed in ennui and one day, out of the blue, decide to abandon the trivialities of time wasting and instead strive for success, resigning from my position without hesitation. Initially, my colleagues were skeptical of my capabilities, yet ultimately, they were confronted by reality, conceding that I truly embodied the title of mascot, which is indeed well deserved. I end my second year of employment. I found the job excessively tedious and, disinclined to pursue a career in sales, I beseeched my boss to transfer me to the research and development department. After much persistence on my part, my boss relented and permitted my transition to the RD team. However, upon my departure, a peculiar phenomenon occurred. Several clients, with whom negotiations had been progressing smoothly, inexplicably withdrew their interest in collaborating with us. Initially, my colleagues in the sales department concealed this from our boss, attributing it to mere coincidence, believing that securing deals hinged solely on negotiation skills and the company's products, with no connection to my presence. Undeterred, they continued to reach out to the clients, hoping to rekindle their interest. Yet, the clients had made their decisions after all. The products our company offered could also be provided by other firms, often at similar prices. However, those competitors boasted larger scales and greater reputations, presenting a natural advantage that made it rather challenging for our company to compete with such industry giants. As it became increasingly apparent that we were on the verge of losing these clients, my colleagues in sales, eager to avoid forfeiting their commission on the orders, approached our boss to relay the situation. Enraged by the unfolding events, my boss promptly reassigned me back to the sales department to oversee operations. A miraculous event transpired. A client, who was on the verge of signing a contract with another company, narrowly escaped a car accident on his way there. Startled by the incident, he resolved to divert his path and come to our company to finalize the agreement instead. In light of this occurrence, both the boss and my colleagues in the sales department became utterly convinced of my seemingly mystical influence. Even the boss, who previously harbored a few doubts, became increasingly amiable towards me thereafter. He was resolute in his decision not to allow me to return to the research and development department, insisting on my continued presence in sales. I felt a twinge of guilt. A sense of uncertainty lingered within me. I harbored insecurities regarding my role as this fortunate talisman. My boss and colleagues perceived my restless desire to depart that month. They took turns persuading me to stay. My colleagues in sales fervently pursued clients, focusing on those notorious for being particularly challenging, ranking among the top 100 on the difficult list. When they failed to secure appointments, they had me make calls, achieving a remarkable success rate: 1 appointment per month, each leading to a signed contract. That month, our company achieved unprecedented performance, resulting in a triumvirate of triumph for the boss, my colleagues, and myself. The boss profited, my colleagues earned commissions, and my salary increased as well. From that moment onward, I found solace in remaining within the sales department. I indulged in my meals, enjoyed my drinks, and partook in leisure activities. Neither the boss nor my colleagues objected. However, the newly appointed sales director had significant reservations. Zhao Wen had just reprimanded me for my tardiness that morning, docking my pay. Now, as he passed by my workstation and noticed a television drama playing on my computer, he turned sharply and approached me. He furrowed his brow and rapped his index finger on my desk, saying, "Are you not aware that watching dramas during work hours is strictly prohibited?" I removed my wireless earbuds and looked up at him. "What did you just say?" "I couldn't hear you." His expression darkened further as he retorted angrily, "This is your first warning for watching dramas at work. It will cost you 200 yuan. After 3 warnings, you will be automatically dismissed. I cannot have employees like you, who lack ambition." Zhao Wen's words echoed loudly, immediately startling my colleagues who had been discreetly observing the situation. Enraged, I stood up to confront him. I was watching dramas with the boss' consent. "The boss hasn't said anything, so on what grounds do you deduct my salary and issue me a warning?" Zhao Wen calmly countered, "Simply because I am your direct superior. As long as you are in the sales department, I have the authority to manage you." A colleague stepped forward to support me. "Director Feng Lele is different." Before the colleague could finish, Zhao Wen brusquely interrupted, "There is nothing different about it. There are no privileges under my watch. If all employees in the sales department were like her, how could the company grow and prosper? Are you so idle that you would defend her? Instead of wasting time, why not make a few more calls to clients or develop new ones? What are you all doing, just waiting for the wind to blow?" Zhao Wen's declaration ignited a wave of discontent among the crowd. Someone murmured quietly, Lele is just quietly sitting there watching a drama, she hasn't disturbed anyone. Another chimed in, if I could be a mascot like her, I'd be even more audacious. Someone expressed strong agreement. Exactly. If I scare my wealth god away, I will be furious. Hearing this, Zhao Wen, not knowing who had spoken, shouted angrily, who is talking? If anyone is dissatisfied, stand up and say it to my face. A few impetuous youths were ready to confront him on the spot. In the eye of the storm, I realized that Zhao Wen harbored ill intentions, fearing that my colleagues, lacking the support of a superior, might be made examples of or face unwarranted dismissals. I reluctantly swallowed my indignation and accepted the fine and warning. Seeing my capitulation, Zhao Wen wore an expression of unspoken triumph. Don't let me catch you engaging in activities unrelated to work during office hours again. Since you seem to have nothing better to do, help your colleagues organize their documents. Those will be sorted before the end of the day. Zhao Wen pointed to the desk of document administrator Zhang Zi, where a chaotic array of unsorted files lay. Zhang Zi suddenly comprehended the situation, staring at me in bewilderment. After Zhao Wen departed, we looked at the mountain of documents, and she lamented, this is my workload for an entire week. How can I possibly finish it by the end of today? I muttered, that wretched Zhao W.E. and IT was impossible to complete, utterly impossible. Zhang Zi helped me and stayed for an additional 2 hours, but I eventually sent her home, continuing to work late on my own. As I toiled away, I imagined with fierce determination how, upon the boss' return, I would make Zhao Wen kneel before me, slapping his own face in remorse, weeping and begging for my forgiveness, desiring to find fault with me as a pretext for my dismissal. How naive. After 3 warnings, I was expected to resign voluntarily, yet I am determined to thwart their intentions. Transforming my sorrow and indignation into motivation, I gaze upon the files that remain, a third yet to be organized, and I feel overwhelmed. This illustrates the profound difficulty of transitioning from extravagance to frugality. At 8 o'clock, I would typically find myself in my modest apartment, having finished a shower and lying in bed, engaging in a spirited online game with friends. Instead, I am here, immersed in an endless pile of documents that seem insurmountable. My stomach protests in hunger. I gently pat my growling belly, deciding to first indulge in a hearty bowl of Lanzhou ramen downstairs before returning to my arduous task. To reach the Lanzhou ramen shop from the company's main entrance, one must take a circuitous route. However, the underground parking lot offers an exit conveniently adjacent to the ramen shop. As the elevator descends to the basement level, I step out and immediately spot Zhao Wen at the entrance. Instinctively avoiding an encounter with someone I find disagreeable, I swiftly retreat into the stairwell, my actions outpacing my thoughts. I ponder. Why am I hiding? Surely, if I cannot see him, it suffices. Yet, I have already concealed myself. I observe Zhao Wen glance back towards the open elevator door, only to turn away again upon realizing no one is present. At this juncture, emerging seems rather imprudent. Thus, I shall wait until he departs before I make my exit. Zhao Wen appears to be waiting for someone, lingering at the entrance without immediate intention to leave. I have begun to experience regret. Why did I wait? I could have simply descended the stairs to the first floor and exited through the main door. Such thoughts crossed my mind, and I genuinely contemplated acting upon them. However, at the moment I raised my foot to step onto the stairs, a delicate male voice rang out, "Darling, have you been waiting long?" I was taken aback, my eyes widening in shock as I beheld a rather handsome young man, who hurriedly approached and embraced Zhao Wen with an air of intimacy. I also witnessed Zhao Wen affectionately caressing the young man's face, smiling as he said, "It's all right, I wouldn't mind waiting for you indefinitely." The young man appeared deeply touched, replying, "Darling, you are too good to me." My heavens! Is this what it means to be good? No, that's not the crux of the matter. Doesn't Zhao Wen have a wife? My mind was in turmoil as I realized the gravity of what I had uncovered. Yet, what further disoriented me were Zhao Wen's subsequent words. "This is what it means to be good to you? If I were to say that I have found you a job that is both easy and well-paying, wouldn't that bring you to tears?" Upon hearing this, I could only scoff at him. Tears of gratitude. What a miserly man! If he cannot afford to support a lover, he should simply admit it rather than seek to take advantage. Just wait. I pulled out my phone to record, intent on exposing this pair of deceitful lovers to Zhao Wen's wife. The young man was overly compliant, eagerly inquiring about the nature of the job Zhao had mentioned. I shook my head in disbelief. Could he truly be so infatuated? Even if he were hopelessly in love, undermining someone else's family is unequivocally wrong and must be condemned. Then, I overheard Zhao say, "It's our department's contract. Clerk position, which requires virtually no work. You can leave at any time and still receive your salary, plus a share of the sales department's total commission." "Oh no, this is aimed at me." The young man, surprisingly delighted, exclaimed, "Such a wonderful job. When can I start? I want to see you every day." Zhao smiled and shook his head, "No rush. I still need to figure out how to get rid of the current occupant before there's a vacancy for you." Upon hearing this, the young man became even more anxious. With such a great job, wouldn't a fool want to leave? I felt inexplicably offended. Zhao reassured the young man and began discussing me. I listened as they deliberated about me. When Zhao spoke of me, his tone was laced with disdain, mockingly asserting that I had initially manipulated the situation to secure my position with the boss. He assured the young man that once he forced me out, he would hire a phony expert, replicating my entry into the company, arranging for this master to mislead the boss on the interview day, claiming he could also attract wealth to the company. This way, even if the boss returned and discovered I had been ousted, he wouldn't take any action against him. No wonder he targeted me as soon as he joined. He truly has a cunning plan in motion. Upon unexpectedly witnessing the sordid machinations of the workplace, I was left so astounded that I barely registered my hunger. After the two departed, I dazedly boarded the elevator to return to the 13th floor of the company. As I stepped out, I encountered Mr. Pan, the owner of the company across the way. His eyes lit up upon seeing me. "Lele, why are you still at the office so late?" His enthusiasm was palpable. I found myself somewhat at a loss, replying, "I have a bit of work left to finish, just staying late." Mr. Pan seemed astonished. "At this hour, you still have clients coming in to sign contracts?" I forced a smile. "No, it's just some other work." His surprise deepened. "Your boss really doesn't care about his employees, letting you work so late." "Lele, if you were to join my company, I would never let you work overtime. Not only would I spare you from such burdens, but I would also offer you shares. What do you think?" After making his proposition, he awaited my response with the same eager anticipation as before. I pondered. How can so many bosses believe in such things? I am merely an unremarkable individual, beset by an abundance of coincidences. A high salary is one thing, but shares as well? Yet, Mr. Pan's company is on the brink of collapse. Transferring there would render those shares worthless. This office building is located in the heart of a bustling city where every inch is precious. When my boss started his venture, he invested his entire fortune to secure half of the 13th floor as a showroom. When I first joined the company, 2/3 of the space remained unoccupied. 3 years ago, the company had already outgrown its capacity to accommodate additional employees. The owner began contemplating an expansion, believing that the office's feng shui was favorable and thus hesitating to relocate to a larger space. He set his sights on the company across the street, which had been thriving 3 years prior, and whose half of the premises was even owned outright, an acquisition that the owner deemed unattainable. Consequently, he opted to establish a branch office. Nevertheless, the owner remained undeterred, primarily because the rival firm had once been a formidable competitor, eclipsing his own company. The prospect of acquiring the opposing firm promised not only a significant boost to his pride, but also a deep sense of accomplishment. 3 years later, fortune smiled upon him as the rival company faced financial turmoil and was on the brink of collapse, desperately in need of capital. Upon learning this news, the owner was tempted to pursue the acquisition of the rival firm and was currently seeking individuals to engage in negotiations, although no agreement had been reached as yet. Given the proximity of our two companies, Mr. Pan from the rival firm had certainly heard of my reputation. Initially, he was incredulous, however, seizing an opportunity later on. He attempted to lure me to his company. As I had done before, I declined his offer once again. Mr. Pan expressed his regret, but just before parting, he feigned mystery and whispered to me, "Consider this. If you join my company and acquire shares, should my firm be acquired by your owner, your worth could multiply exponentially." Hi, boss, I am merely an ordinary mortal, incapable of resisting the allure of wealth. If you do not return soon to uphold justice on my behalf, I fear I may succumb to temptation and stray. For the moment, I resist the seduction and return to the office, where I am compelled to toil diligently, experiencing the true essence of a life akin to that of a beast of burden, laboring until past 10 o'clock to complete my tasks. The following day, it is only through sheer will that I manage to rise from my slumber. This time, I am not late, clocking in precisely on time. Zhao Wen, upon witnessing my punctuality, is filled with disappointment and, seeking fault, remarks, others arrive at least 10 minutes early, yet you merely arrive on the day. If other employees were to emulate your behavior, could you bear the responsibility for that? Goodness, is arriving on time a grave sin? I think to myself, but refrain from voicing my thoughts. By the time I realize I should remain silent, the words have already escaped my lips, leaving Zhao Wen's expression contorted with anger. He jabs a finger at my face and shouts, "Disrespecting your superior will earn you another warning. You have but one chance remaining." How careless of me. I mentally note this transgression, awaiting the return of the boss to settle both new grievances and old scores. Fuming, I rush to inquire about Zhao Wen's wife from the HR sister. She shakes her head in confusion, explaining that Zhao Wen has only recently joined the company. While he filled out his marital status as married, the emergency contact listed is not his wife. Unable to glean any useful information, I leave in disappointment. Upon returning to my workspace, I am nearly misled by the mountain of documents strewn across my desk, almost mistaking it for a different location. The colleague seated beside me regarded me with a sympathetic gaze, remarking, "These tasks have all been assigned to you by Director Zhao." Zhang Zi approached, her expression laden with remorse as she said, "Lele, you've been working so hard these past few days. Director Zhao is aware that I assisted you yesterday. He warned me not to help you again, lest he deduct my salary. That scoundrel Zhao Wen. When it comes to creating trouble, he considers himself second to none. The documents I am tasked with are the sales data since the company's inception. He has instructed me to meticulously verify and input them into the system by the end of the workday on Friday. This is utterly exhausting. If he seeks to undermine me, I shall retaliate in kind." I captured screenshots of him embracing his male paramour in the underground parking lot, printed several copies, and had a courier deliver them to the company's front desk, insisting on his personal acknowledgement of receipt. As I immerse myself in a mountain of paperwork, I caught a glimpse of Zhao when making his way to the front desk. My workstation afforded a clear view of that area, and I observed Zhao when approached the courier, who, as per my instructions, urged him to open the envelope for inspection. The moment Zhao Wen unsealed it and glimpsed the photographs, his face drained of color, yet he feigned composure and began to repackage them. Under the bemused gaze of the receptionist, he stumbled back to his office, closing the door firmly and drawing the blinds tight. A small sigh of relief escaped me, granting a measure of satisfaction. Zhao Wen remained in his office for an extended period, only emerging when summoned for a meeting by colleagues from other departments, his gaze distant and unfocused. His gaze swept over each passerby, as if every individual were a potential adversary intent on his downfall. When his eyes landed on me, he lingered for an additional 2 seconds, scrutinizing me intently. "What are you staring at?" I shot him a defiant glare in return, and his expression turned to one of bemusement, unable to articulate his thoughts as he shifted his focus to others. Internally, I reveled in my triumph, feeling a sense of relief from suspicion. However, my elation was short-lived. Upon returning from a meeting, he unexpectedly inquired about the location of the personnel elevator monitoring room, claiming he had lost something in the elevator. I swiftly intervened, racing ahead to the monitoring room to find old Lu, presenting him with a generous assortment of snacks favored by children. I showed him a photo of Zhao Wen, earnestly instructing him not to allow this person access to the footage should he request it. Old Lu accepted my offerings with a cheerful demeanor, assuring me that if Zhao Wen were to arrive, he wouldn't even set foot inside the monitoring room. See? At crucial moments, good relationships can indeed resolve problems. During my mundane hours in the office, I often found solace in visiting the monitoring room or the security office, engaging in delightful conversations with the elder staff. The myriad of love-hate stories among these middle-aged individuals provided me with ample entertainment, leaving me thoroughly entertained and my worldview expanded. Old Lu has a plump grandson who is particularly fond of snacks. Lu dotes on him, and each time I visit, I bring an excess of treats to share with Lu, thereby solidifying our intergenerational friendship. True to form, old Lu proved to be reliable. I witnessed Zhao return with a scowl, his brow furrowed as if it could crush a fly. If you wish to find me, you might as well feast upon something cold. After an entire week of relentless overtime, my spirit has utterly abandoned me. My energy is in ruins. Yet my heart feels liberated. For I have accomplished what seemed an insurmountable task through sheer determination. Before clocking out on Friday, when Zhao came to inspect and nitpick, I proudly showcased my achievements, delivering a resounding slap to his face. He could find no faults, ultimately begrudgingly advising me to maintain my performance. Yet, he, undeterred, sought to impose further tasks upon my weekend. I deftly made my escape before he could utter a word. Upon returning home, I succumbed to a profound slumber that lasted a day and a night, during which my mother attempted to reach me several times. Just as she was on the verge of reporting my absence to the authorities, I finally awoke, well-rested, and answered her call. Initially, she intended to scold me, but I poured forth my grievances regarding the trials I had endured that week. Upon hearing my lamentations, her heart ached, and she promptly hung up. I thought, what a peculiar way to respond. When I called her back, the line indicated she was already engaged in another conversation. After a considerable wait, she finally returned my call. Without delay, she informed me that she had consulted my uncle, who had read my fortune. He said that I am currently in a phase of professional turbulence. Without breaking the old, the new cannot be established. I must enact change to elevate my financial prospects. Conversely, if I maintain the status quo, I risk incurring losses. His words sent a chill down my spine. Although I verbally dismissed such notions, I dared not act recklessly. This is akin to those who profess disbelief in deities. Yet when faced with the god of wealth, they cannot help but light 3 incense sticks in hopes of sudden fortune. Even in the realm of short videos. Upon reaching a 0 frame, the host proclaims that encountering this video signifies the commencement of a change in fortune, urging viewers to leave comments for good luck, effectively manipulating them into compliance. As the return of my boss approaches, there remains but a week. For the first time, I perceive the days at work stretching interminably. On Monday, I made a point to arrive 10 minutes early. Behold, this is how the obedient are tamed. However, the early bird catches the worm. Lo and behold, who did I encounter in the underground parking lot? Just as I parked and turned off the engine, a vehicle pulled up in front of mine. Upon seeing Zhao in the passenger seat, I felt a wave of relief that my anti-peeping film was well applied. The driver was an elegant woman, and as Zhao exited the car, he bid her farewell with a gentle expression, tenderly reminding her to drive safely on her way home. He even referred to her as his wife. Reflecting on my unshareable video, it was indeed a stroke of fortune that came effortlessly. Yet, I remain uncertain about the quality of their marital bond. Could his wife be infatuated? Should I disclose Zhao Wen's potential infidelity to her? What if she turns against me in betrayal? I must first add her as a contact and observe for a few days before proceeding further. Zhao Wen entered the elevator, and as she started her car to depart, I followed closely behind, skillfully grazing the rear of her vehicle, causing a minor scratch. This prompted her to halt her journey. With utmost sincerity, I offered my apologies, explaining my urgency to get to work and expressing my willingness to settle the matter privately with compensation. I successfully added her on WeChat, albeit at a financial cost. Thus, I marked another entry against Zhao Wen in my mental ledger of grievances. After a brief delay in the parking lot, I managed to clock in just on time. I had anticipated that Zhao Wen might create difficulties for me, yet her gaze bypassed me entirely, fixating instead on something behind me, her expression momentarily betraying a hint of panic, as if she had encountered a ghost. Curiosity piqued. I turned to see what had captured her attention. To my astonishment, it was indeed a ghostly sight for Zhao Wen. The male paramour had arrived at the company. Clearly, the two had failed to communicate effectively. After all, even if Zhao Wen were endowed with boundless courage, she would not dare to brazenly bring her male companion into the office without first identifying who might have uncovered their affair. The HR representative introduced the male paramour to Zhao Wen, presenting him as a newly recruited salesperson. I couldn't help but feel immense admiration for the audacity of this individual. Zhao Wen's smile was painfully stiff as she summoned the leader of the second sales team, assigning the male paramour to her supervision under the guise of professional duty. The male paramour, anxious that his connection with Zhao Wen might be too obvious, cast furtive glances at her that nearly dripped with tension. This situation was undeniably exhilarating. The sensation of possessing a secret known only to me, savoring the unfolding drama from the sidelines, was truly intoxicating. The arrival of the male paramour momentarily extricated me from the depths of my own turmoil. Zhao Wen's mind was in disarray, leaving him unable to direct his energies towards troubling me. However, I had underestimated the depths of depravity exhibited by this conniving duo. In merely half a day, they reached a consensus. Zhao Wen returned to his usual self, and the male interloper, known as Li Junjie, ceased to gaze at Zhao Wen with his lingering, lustful eyes. Once Zhao Wen regained his focus, he resumed his campaign against me. This afternoon, a client was scheduled to visit our company to inspect our products. As per the usual protocol, my responsibilities entailed accompanying the sales team as a mere ornament, occasionally presenting products to the client when necessary. The task was effortless and required minimal cognitive engagement. 10 minutes prior to the client's arrival, Zhao Wen placed an A4 sheet, inscribed with several addresses, before me. I looked at him, bewildered. He produced his wallet, extracting a handful of red bills, and, in a commanding tone, declared, "I shall personally treat our department colleagues to afternoon tea. These establishments are renowned local favorites. You will procure the items, and the remaining funds shall serve as your compensation for running errands." There are myriad ways to insult a person, yet Zhao Wen opted for this laborious method. His deliberate harassment was evident to any discerning observer. I exchanged a glance with the sales team, a shared understanding forged through years of camaraderie, leading us to the conclusion, let us deal with him. The choice between a swift resolution and an endless ordeal was indeed an easy one. Previously, Zhao Wen's antagonism was directed solely at me, which did not infringe upon our collective interests. I merely needed to endure until the boss's return for the matter to resolve itself naturally. However, at present, he is making my life difficult for his own selfish desires, disregarding the interests of the collective. Such behavior is intolerable. A leader devoid of a broader perspective will only lead us into a pit of despair. Furthermore, given his current demeanor, even if the boss returns, he will undoubtedly put on a fade in front of the boss while secretly scheming against me behind the scenes. I accepted the money from Zhao Wen and outsourced the procurement of afternoon tea to a professional courier, subsequently seeking refuge in a nearby CF to pass the time. A colleague informed me that as soon as I left, Zhao Wen arranged for Li Junjie to take my place, accompanying the client to view the products. This was entirely within my expectations. I wished to conduct one final experiment to ascertain whether it was my auspicious presence that attracted orders for the company or if the sales team played a more significant role in this endeavor. Our original plan was for my colleagues to feign an urgent matter upon the client's arrival, thus entrusting Zhao Wen and Li Junjie with the negotiation. Should Zhao Wen and Li Junjie successfully secure the client, the sales department's staff would undoubtedly acknowledge his capabilities. After all, he is the man who triumphed over the Mascot. Conversely, if Zhao Wen fails to secure the client and continues to target me thereafter, I might as well take leave from the company until the boss returns, allowing Zhao Wen to revel in his antics. When the boss sees the dismal performance of the sales department upon his return, it will be enough to serve him a dose of reality. However, plans are often subject to unforeseen changes. The situation has taken a ludicrous turn. We have a private group for the sales department's wealthy elite, and at this moment, my colleagues are fervently inundating the chat with messages. Recent intel indicates that a client has become trapped in an elevator. Surprisingly, they are ensnared alongside Mr. Pan from the opposing company. A sense of foreboding envelopes me. The accompanying image captures Zhao Wen's striking expression as she stands at the elevator entrance, her face shadowed with discontent. The Building elevator maintenance service conducts inspections weekly. In all my years here, the elevator has never faltered. Yet, in a most improbable twist, such an event has transpired today, and astonishingly, just a day after the maintenance team's visit. The rescue team arrived promptly, but lamentably, the elevator was lodged between the 12th and 13th floors. They first needed to assess the specific situation before manually maneuvering the elevator, gradually and cautiously guiding it back to the 12th floor, whereupon they could open the cabin doors and liberate the occupants. This process inevitably demands considerable time, leaving the trapped client in a state of anxiety. while those outside remain powerless. Moreover, the client is ensnared with Mr. Pan, who surely seizes every opportunity to win over the client. Indeed, after more than 40 minutes, when the client and Mr. Pan were finally rescued, the two had forged a steadfast bond of camaraderie. Zhao Wen, eager to reclaim the client's favor, approached with fervor, only for the client to politely express their desire to visit Mr. Pan's company instead. As I returned to the office, carrying the afternoon tea delivered by the courier, I fortuitously encountered Mr. Pan exiting the building, deep in conversation with the client, both appearing quite pleased. After sending off the client, Mr. Pan, his face glowing with satisfaction, returned and shared the elevator ride with me to the 13th floor. Noticing the numerous items I was carrying, he enthusiastically insisted on helping me. Despite my repeated refusals, he expressed his gratitude, saying, "Don't be so formal, Lele. If you hadn't been out of the office today, I wouldn't have had the chance to poach clients from your company." To my dismay, Zhao Wen overheard this statement. His gaze pierced through me as if I were a corporate spy. Did he truly believe in such absurdity? Was I expected to orchestrate a malfunction in the elevator as well? Zhao Wen exemplified the notion that people often believe what they choose to. As I followed him back to the sales department, I feigned ignorance of the tension, cheerfully calling everyone to join for afternoon tea. In a moment of sheer insensitivity, I approached Zhao Wen and produced the remaining 3 red bills, thanking him. "Thank you, Director Zhao. This is the leftover money from purchasing afternoon tea. And since you mentioned it as a reimbursement for running errands, I graciously accept." "There's no need for thanks," Zhao Wen replied, his face a mask of anger. Each word pronounced with force, his jaw clenched in evident frustration. Unable to tolerate the injustice towards his beloved, Li Junjie stepped forward to defend Zhao Wen, asserting, "Director Zhao has already generously offered everyone complimentary afternoon tea. Why do you still take the leftover money?" I was at a loss for words. Was he incapable of seeing anything beyond Zhao Wen's merits? "This is the remuneration that Director Zhao personally offered me. He has no objections. What qualifications do you, a mere sycophant, have to criticize me?" With this retort, I rendered him speechless. Unable to counter my argument, he immediately turned to Zhao Wen, raising his voice in a tone of desperation. "Director Zhao, look at her." The moment he uttered those words, my colleagues were stirred, their attention shifting to Zhao Wen. His expression darkened, akin to a pot's bottom, as he rebuked Li Junjie. "What are you staring at? Am I such a petty person?" Li Junjie, looking aggrieved, clearly had more to say, but Zhao Wen ignored him, directing his gaze towards me. "Come to my office. I have questions for you." Li Junjie, infuriated, stomped his foot and shot me a fierce glare. I was left utterly bewildered. "Now, tell me, when did you have private dealings with President Pan from the rival company?" In Zhao Wen's office, he wasted no time in attempting to pin the blame on me. I adamantly denied such an allegation, declaring, "I have not had any private contact with President Pan. The most that had occurred was his attempts to recruit me, which I had consistently rejected." Zhao Wen, unconvinced, suddenly changed his demeanor, slamming his hand on the table in a fit of rage. "If you do not speak the truth, I have heard otherwise." How impressive, slamming the table. I stood up, kicking my wheeled office chair aside, and shouted back, equally enraged, "I am speaking the truth. Believe it or not." At that moment, with a resounding crash, the chair collided with the bookshelf. The commotion was so loud that colleagues outside assumed something significant was unfolding. They rushed in, forming a protective barrier around me, confronting Zhao Wen with fervor. "Mr. Zhao, how could you strike someone? Mr. Zhao, this is utterly excessive. Mr. Zhao, what skill is there in bullying a girl? Mr. Zhao." Each person began with a respectful address, elevating Zhao Wen's stature, while the heavy thuds of his frustration echoed around him. He was taken aback by the solidarity of the sales department, a group notoriously difficult to manage, now rousing his ire. Amidst this, one individual distinguished himself, Li Junjie, who pushed through the crowd to stand before Zhao Wen. "So, it is you who conspire to bully the talented, is it? You have no grasp of the situation yet claim that Mr. Zhao is violent. Do you see any injuries on her? You spread unfounded rumors without basis. Does Mr. Zhao strike you as someone capable of such actions? Are you all ready to abandon your duties?" Li Junjie's final threat ignited the collective anger of the group. Before Zhao Wen's arrival, the atmosphere in the sales department had been the most harmonious within the company. However, his presence soured the mood, leading to widespread discontent. He held incessant meetings, where he either belittled subordinates or promised unattainable dreams. There were even competition rankings with no rewards for the top performers and penalties for those at the bottom. He incessantly questioned, "Are you also idle? Shouldn't you be reaching out to more clients? Is finishing your work the end of your responsibilities?" It was baffling how the boss had recruited such talent. Perhaps he had previously worked in a prison company where even a life sentence allowed for a 9-to-5 routine. Zhao Wen's approach was a relentless barrage, seemingly designed to test the limits of human endurance. It was only a matter of time before this provocation would lead to widespread outrage, though I had not anticipated that I would serve as the catalyst. Zhao Wen's reputation had been utterly tarnished within the company. Upon hearing of his incompetence in managing subordinates, the heads of other departments nearly surrounded him for a collective reprimand, only to be thwarted by their colleagues who came to his rescue. The sales team was not composed of fools, while they might exchange a few jests. They were well aware that any physical altercation would lead to Zhao Wen, the petty individual he was, calling the authorities, resulting in a few days of detention and financial repercussions. Thus, with the intervention of personnel from other departments, the tension dissipated, leaving Zhao Wen alone in his office, questioning the very essence of his existence. However, this state of affairs could not persist indefinitely, as the boss would not return for several more days. This prompted a wave of criticism directed at the boss for abandoning such a large corporation to seek solitude in the remote mountains. The absence of prior incidents had evidently led to this misplaced confidence. Since my arrival at the company, the boss had become increasingly enamored with this notion. Having heard that fasting could enhance one's energy and aura, while others practiced it for a week, he had raised the ante to 2 weeks. Setting aside this discussion, the team turned their focus to resolving the current dilemma. Following the commotion of the day, Zhao Wen undoubtedly harbored resentment towards everyone in the sales department, save for Li Junjie. After deliberation, the group unanimously agreed to endure and bide their time, believing that once the boss returned, all would be well. To conclude, I found myself designated as a prime target for protection, as they collectively assumed that Zhao Wen's initial ire would be directed towards me. I was truly grateful for their concern. As the saying goes, 3 cobblers with their wits combined can rival Zhuge Liang, yet here, the combined intellect of tenfold that number failed to devise a single effective strategy. An errant thought crossed my mind, reminiscent of my mother consulting my uncle for divination. No breaking, no standing. What to do? Would forcing Zhao Wen to leave count as a resolution? He intends to drive me away, so in the spirit of reciprocity, I shall exert my own pressure upon him. Is that unreasonable? As this thought crossed my mind, I suddenly found clarity. I glanced at my colleagues who were still engaged in fervent discussion and decided that this matter was best handled independently. The method to deal with Zhao Wen was rather straightforward. I simply could not believe that Li Junjie could maintain distance from him within the confines of the company, let alone in other secluded corners. Even if Zhao Wen could manage it, Li Junjie would inevitably falter. Thus, the moment to showcase my formidable network within this office building had arrived. I had established a group of acquaintances, akin to distant relatives, comprised of security guards and cleaners within this very edifice. These individuals, brimming with energy, often took on various part-time tasks to supplement their household income or simply to pass the time. They eagerly seized any opportunity to earn money, regardless of the amount. I sent out a recruitment notice within the group. The task involved capturing footage of Zhao Wen and Li Junjie together. For each instance of them appearing in the same frame, I would offer 20. Should they capture a moment of the two embracing or engaging in more intimate behavior, the reward would be 30 for a photograph and 50 for a video. Once this announcement was disseminated, it sent ripples of excitement through the group. They had always been spectators of such gossip, but had yet to experience the thrill of this particular narrative involving 2 men. Their interest piqued, they eagerly signed up. Within an hour of sending out the recruitment notice, I received the first piece of evidence, a video of Zhao Wen and Li Junjie embracing on the rooftop. In the video, Li Junjie tenderly embraces Zhao Wen, who is furiously cursing at me. Li Junjie continuously offers him comfort, while the latter part remains indescribable. I felt a pang of unease as I observed, hoping it was merely a figment of my imagination. Immediately, I took a screenshot and printed the photo, instructing a courier to deliver it to the check-in area, allowing Zhao Wen to open it in person for verification. Witnessing Zhao Wen's pale visage, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Shortly thereafter, Zhao Wen and Li Junjie hurriedly exited once more. Before long, I received a glimpse of the two in the men's restroom, huddled together, engrossed in examining the photograph. When they emerged, the courier was already awaiting them at the front desk. This familiar scene gradually drained color from Zhao Wen's face. Li Junjie's complexion was hardly better. He hastily tore open the envelope before Zhao Wen could react. Upon seeing their own image captured in the restroom, both wore identical expressions of alarm. My heart soared with delight. Just wait, there is more to come. Subsequently, they began devising plans to uncover the identity of the individual who had taken the clandestine photographs. Realizing that only images of their time together had been captured, they resorted to changing locations in a frantic search. Regardless of whether they found themselves in a corner, stairwell, basement, vehicle, or elevator, they were unerringly photographed, yet remained oblivious to the presence of their pursuers. They could never fathom that it was not one person, but rather a collective of individuals trailing them. As days passed, Zhao Wen and Li Junjie grew increasingly haggard, consumed by paranoia. In just one day, the boss would return. Zhao Wen and Li Junjie grew anxious. Li Junjie coveted my position and pressured Zhao Wen to devise a plan to eliminate me before the boss's arrival. They had initially ruled me out as a suspect since I possessed an alibi each time they were caught. Realizing that I was not the mastermind behind the schemes, they felt no apprehension about forcing me out, fearing that I might retaliate against them. However, they could not pinpoint any fault in my conduct, leaving them without grounds for dismissal. I remained impervious to their attempts to undermine me, as though their efforts were akin to striking a pillow. My reactions were non-existent. In essence, I adhered to a singular principle: to endure until the boss returned, at which point I would unleash a torrent of complaints against them. Ultimately, these two individuals displayed a shocking lack of integrity. Upon returning from a brief restroom visit, I opened my computer to find a company-wide reprimand glaring on the screen. Zhao Wen vehemently criticized me for exceeding a 5-minute bathroom break, accusing me of negligence and dereliction of duty, subjecting me to a harsh tirade. Such a vile scheme. Despite being fully aware that their intention was to provoke me, I could not contain my indignation. At that very moment, Mr. Pan sent me a message, offering me a 10% stake in his company as I contemplated my options. He was in negotiations to acquire my company, and his desire to recruit me was aimed at strengthening his position during the discussions. The acquisition would involve a partial equity purchase, allowing for a merger of the two companies, wherein I could retain my shares. Thus, I would become a shareholder, and regardless of how many sales directors came and went, no one would dare to undermine me or create obstacles in my path. Hi, boss, I must apologize. One must prioritize oneself, lest the heavens enact their wrath. There is no need for further contemplation. I shall proceed forthwith. I promptly opened a document to compose my resignation letter and dispatched it to Zhao Wen's email. Before I could reach Zhao Wen's office to seek approval for my resignation, he had already granted it in an instant. I immediately began to gather my personal belongings from my workstation. Upon witnessing this, a colleague inquired with confusion, "Lele, why are you packing everything up?" With a smile gracing my face, I joyfully replied, "I have resigned." This declaration sent shockwaves through the room. "What, you have resigned?" exclaimed colleague A with a sharp gasp. "I must be hearing things." Colleague B refused to accept the reality. "I cannot bear to be without you." Colleague C lamented with heartfelt sorrow. "Have you secured a new position?" "I too wish to resign." "I shall follow you." Colleague D was the quickest to react. "We all shall follow you," echoed the sentiments of my colleagues in unison. Zhao Wen emerged from his office, bellowing, "What madness is this?" "Indeed, I have gone mad. You have driven away my fortune. How can I not lose my wits? I recently acquired a new car on loan, and with a base salary of 2,300, I cannot manage the payments without Lele. How shall I survive?" This was indeed an exaggeration. After my colleagues' desperate attempts to retain me culminated in tearful farewells, I proudly strode into the opposing company with my belongings in hand. where President Pan awaited my arrival with open arms. The collective sales team stood in stunned silence. Zhao Wen remarked, "Feng Lele, I knew it all along. You're a spy sent by the rival company, and now your true colors have been revealed." Everyone regarded Zhao Wen with incredulity. As no company would send a fortune bringer to bolster a competing firm, such a notion was absurd. However, President Pan, with an amiable demeanor, approached Zhao Wen, expressing his profound gratitude for the assistance that had encouraged him to switch to his company. This exchange was a blend of both injury and insult. Zhao Wen's complexion oscillated between shades of blue and purple, then crimson, a truly dramatic display. I discreetly informed the sales team in our group chat, urging them to remain calm and not to act impulsively by resigning, assuring them that I would return. This reassured them, and they bid me farewell with cheerful spirits before heading back to the office. Soon, the entrance was devoid of people, leaving only Zhao Wen and Li Junjie. Li Junjie, with an almost foolish delight, implored Zhao Wen to allow him to take my place immediately. The following day marked the return of the missing individual. I unexpectedly encountered my former boss, Su Tianyi, in the underground parking lot. He was carrying several shopping bags, and upon seeing me, he cheerfully proclaimed that these were gifts for me. Before I could decline, President Pan also arrived, gratefully shaking Su Tianyi's hand laden with bags. "Mr. Su, I truly appreciate your discerning eye. Lele is an exceptional talent, and I am particularly pleased with her." Su Tianyi looked at me with a bewildered expression, while I cast my gaze downward, a slight pang of conscience pricking at my heart. In the elevator, President Pan incessantly praised me to Su Tianyi, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, and joined in the accolades. Both men were exceedingly pleased with me. It was not until we arrived at the entrances of the two companies that I followed President Pan through the grand doors of his establishment. "Lele, you've taken a wrong turn, come back," Su Tianyi urgently called out to me. President Pan, however, remained in high spirits, no mistake at all. "Lele officially joined my company yesterday." "What did you say?" Su Tianyi bellowed, causing the shopping bags in his hands to tumble to the ground. "This is how it stands. Boss, you must take a stand for us." After an hour of grievances from the sales department colleagues, Su Tianyi's countenance darkened considerably. "Damn Zhao Wen, I'll have my revenge." It is said that on that day, Su Tianyi nearly sent Zhao Wen to the next life, only to be restrained by several burly men who desperately held him back during his furious outburst. Zhao Wen's every effort and ploy fell flat before the boss. He was summarily dismissed that very day along with Li Junjie. With matters reaching this point, the boss expedited the acquisition process. Initially, both parties intended to proceed gradually, engaging in a protracted tug-of-war to secure the greatest profit. Upon learning that I had acquired shares from President Pan, Su Tianyi, who had previously been unyielding and assertive, surprisingly became more amenable. With my stake in President Pan's company, I was now a shareholder, deeply entwined with the firm, and no longer had to worry about being poached by any unscrupulous competitor. Mr. Pan, having settled on terms that pleased him, sold his company to Su Tianyi. He retained his shares, while the other minor shareholders accepted their payouts and transferred their stakes to Su Tianyi. Su Tianyi acted swiftly, completing the acquisition process within a month. And now the entire 13th floor belonged to him. I returned to my original position, and my colleagues remarked, "Lele, you cannot imagine, during the month of your absence, I did not secure a single deal." Su Tianyi, filled with trepidation, vowed never to undertake fasting or disconnect from the internet again, realizing that the company could not function without him. I quietly transferred a sum of money to my mother, instructing her to procure some fine liquor and cigarettes for my dear uncle. Ding dong. My phone chimed. It was a message from Zhao Wen's ex-wife informing me that, with the evidence I provided, she had successfully divorced Zhao Wen and left him considerably financially strained. She returned the previously incurred car repair expenses, multiplied several times over, accompanied by a simple note of gratitude. "Thank you.